Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Amanda Perrault? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. Amanda Johnson Perrault was born on August 18, 1975, in Lawrenceville, Georgia. At some point, she married, had a son and a daughter, and divorced. Her children lived with their grandparents. In the fall of 2011, Amanda went online to search for a new lover and met a man named Michael Seth Perrault, who went by the name Seth. By this time, Amanda was working as a receptionist. Seth was not working at all. He was supported by his parents. Amanda quickly moved in with Seth, believing that she had found the love of her life. In the summer of 2012, Seth had a daughter with another woman. His daughter's name was Bray. The timing of this birth makes it seem like Bray's mother may have become pregnant prior to the beginning of the relationship between Amanda and Seth. Either that's what happened, or Amanda was very forgiving. On June 23, 2017, Amanda and Seth married. Amanda quit her job as a receptionist. Seth gained custody of his daughter Bray, perhaps due in part to the perceived stability of being married. In November 2018, Seth became a police officer with the Eatonton Police Department. This town is 75 miles east of Atlanta. The family moved to Eatonton and lived in a 2,200 square foot house at 133 Long Island Drive. This house had been purchased by Seth's father. The relationship between Amanda and Seth was tumultuous. They frequently argued, and Seth was allegedly violent at times. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. On January 28, 2020, 44-year-old Amanda went to a neighbor's house and called the police. She reported that her 43-year-old husband Seth called her a blank, held her up against a wall, and put his hands around her neck. The blank is a word that rhymes with bore and refers to a sex worker. Seth denied being physically violent, but later admitted to pushing Amanda out of the front door. After this, Seth offered other versions of his story, saying that he pushed her because she was hitting him, and he pushed her because she was damaging property. The police did not find any injuries on Seth, and there was no damage in the house. Seth was arrested for simple battery and released on bail. The judge offered to grant a stay-away order against Seth, but Amanda declined. She told the judge that she wanted Seth to come back home, and he had nowhere else to go. 6 days later, on February 3, 2020, a Putnam County Sheriff's deputy went to the Perrault family house to serve Seth with a witness subpoena. The deputy arrived at 1:10 p.m. and rang the doorbell. He heard heavy footsteps from inside the house, but nobody came to the door. The deputy left at 1:17 p.m. At 1:36 p.m., the deputy returned to the house after Seth called the police, claiming that his wife had brought an end to her own life. The deputy encountered Seth on the front steps, crying. Seth made a number of statements. For example, he did not care if he spent the rest of his life in prison, his life was over, and his wife was trying to clear his name, but could not handle all the stress of the media. Inside the house, the police discovered Amanda's dead body. Here is what the police found during the course of their investigation. Amanda was on her back in her bed with her arms at her side. She had been killed from a single gunshot wound to the right side of her head. The weapon that killed her was a Smith & Wesson Bodyguard .380 semi-automatic pistol, chambered in .380 ACP. It was found near the left side of Amanda's feet, near the footboard. A cartridge was in the chamber, but the magazine was not in the weapon. It was near Amanda's right thigh. 2 cartridges were near the footboard, and a spent shell case was near the bedroom door, 17 feet away from Amanda's body. Empty bottles of whiskey were found in the bedroom, and there was a damp towel on the closet floor. The police transported Seth to the station. They noticed that he smelled like soap. Seth unwisely agreed to talk to the police. He said that he and his wife were both in bed having a casual conversation when Amanda produced the pistol. She said, "I'm sorry I put you through this," before firing the fatal shot. Seth claimed that his wife was distraught over falsely accusing him of physical violence 6 days earlier. As far as how the magazine had been removed from the pistol, Seth had no explanation. He claimed that he did not touch the pistol, although he may have touched Amanda after the shooting. There was one particle of gunshot residue on Seth's left hand. Amanda's hands were never tested for gunshot residue. On February 5, 2 days after the shooting, Seth was arrested for murder. On August 21 of that same year, the medical examiner determined that Amanda had pulled the trigger. This case was not a homicide. Despite this finding, Seth was indicted for murder on November 3, 2020. On February 25, 2022, he was found guilty of malice murder, felony murder, aggravated assault, and simple battery. Seth received a term of life in prison without the possibility of parole. Now moving to my analysis. Seth maintains his innocence, and he has a few supporters. They argued that Amanda's death was not ruled a homicide. How can someone be convicted of murder when there was no murder? The state of Georgia, of course, disagrees. They believe the medical examiner made a mistake and failed to consider all the evidence. Seth is the one who pulled the trigger. This brings me to the question, was Seth guilty of murder? Let's take a look at the evidence both for and against the idea that he was guilty, starting with the inculpatory factors. Amanda and Seth had a long history of conflict. One neighbor said that Seth grabbed Amanda's hair and kicked her. On another occasion, Amanda told the neighbor that if she was ever found dead, she did not do it to herself. Another neighbor heard Amanda and Seth arguing on many occasions, including the day Amanda was killed. Amanda had told her sisters about injuries she sustained at the hands of Seth. On Amanda's cell phone, the police found a video of Seth screaming at Amanda while they were in their bedroom. 6 days before the shooting, Seth admitted to pushing Amanda and was arrested. This not only supports the idea that he was violent, but it gave him a motive for murder. If convicted, Seth would have lost his job and may have lost custody of his daughter. During an interview with Seth's daughter, Bray, she indicated that Amanda told her that if Bray's mother won custody of her, Seth would shoot Amanda dead. On the morning of her death, Amanda used her phone to search for homes for sale in Putnam County. This makes it seem like she was getting ready to leave Seth. At 10:16 a.m. on the day of the shooting, surveillance video captured Seth at a convenience store wearing a hat, a t-shirt, and jogging pants. The shirt and the pants were later found in the washing machine in his house. The pistol that killed Amanda had a live cartridge in the chamber. This means that when it was fired, the magazine was in the pistol. When the police discovered Amanda's body on the bed, the magazine was not in the pistol. The pistol and the magazine were in two separate places on the bed. Someone must have removed the magazine after the fatal shot. Due to the nature of the gunshot wound Amanda sustained, she would have been immediately incapacitated. Amanda could not have removed the magazine. This means that Seth must have removed it, but he denied ever touching the gun. Seth refused to open the door when the deputy tried to serve him with a subpoena, only to call his boss a few minutes later and report the shooting. Why didn't he immediately call 911? Clothing that Seth was wearing prior to the shooting was found in his washing machine. He smelled like soap, and a damp towel was found in the closet. This makes it seem like Seth was trying to clean up. Seth had a particle of gunshot residue on his left hand. Moving to the exculpatory factors, Amanda's blood alcohol level was 0.23, almost 3 times the legal limit for driving in Georgia. The gunshot wound she sustained was consistent with the gun being pressed up against her head. Clothing Seth had been wearing was found in the washing machine, but the machine had not been run. A note in Amanda's handwriting was found. It declared that she had falsely accused Seth of domestic violence. The note indicated that Seth never put his hands on her. Amanda wrote, quote, I feel horrible for the humiliation I have put my husband and my family through. I am writing this to take any punishment I deserve for what I have done," unquote. Maybe Amanda did feel guilty for harming her husband's reputation, whether he was responsible for the violence or not. A defense expert testified that it was possible the magazine release of the pistol was pressed right after the pistol was fired. Maybe Amanda did not have a good grip on the weapon and her thumb hit the release button due to the recoil. It's also possible that Seth did remove the magazine himself, but he did not fire the weapon. The results of an autopsy indicated there was no homicide. Furthermore, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation stood behind the findings of the medical examiner. So there are law enforcement officers in Georgia saying there was no murder. When considering all the evidence in this case, do I believe that Seth was guilty of murder? Yes. In my opinion, he was guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. What do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. Seth was self-centered, grandiose, manipulative, deceptive, violent, vindictive, immature, petty, cold, callous, sensation-seeking, and had a sense of entitlement. When Amanda met Seth, she was in a bad place emotionally. She settled for an undesirable partner because she was desperate and did not want to be alone. Seth exerted a high level of control over her and took advantage of her. To compensate for her negative feelings, Amanda consumed excessive quantities of alcohol. This only made Amanda more dependent on Seth because she needed someone to supply her with the alcohol. It was obvious that Amanda and Seth were headed for disaster. Neighbors witnessed acts of violence, but failed to call the police because Seth was a police officer himself. They didn't want any trouble with law enforcement. The domestic violence incident 6 days before the shooting jeopardized Seth's job and custody of his daughter. A judge offered to issue a stay-away order against Seth, but Amanda was consumed with fear. She believed that any action she took against Seth would only make him angrier. Now back at home, Seth coerced Amanda to write the note retracting her accusation. It was really his only hope of not losing his job and his daughter. In order to prevent Amanda from changing her mind and once again stating that Seth was guilty, Seth waited until Amanda was intoxicated, shot her in the head, cleaned himself up, and said that Amanda pulled the trigger. For some reason, Seth removed the magazine from the pistol after the shooting and left it that way. Maybe he was distracted by the deputy who tried to serve the subpoena. Like Seth meant to put the magazine back in the pistol, but after hearing the doorbell, he became scared and anxious. Despite this mistake, the scene of the shooting was confusing enough to result in different opinions about what happened. Ultimately, it was the history of violence that led to the guilty verdict. Amanda could not escape Seth, and Seth could not escape his past. Those are my thoughts in the case of Amanda Perrault. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They consistently generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.